Good morning, everybody. We're gonna wait for a couple more folks to come on, but it's so good to see each and every one of you up early, especially Mr. Scanlon. That's my guy right there.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, man. Bright and early, man. You look good on a Monday, huh?
It's 9 o'clock. It's late.
Oh, true that, true that, true that. You're right about that. Cool, cool. So we're gonna hang out just a moment, make sure we get some other board members on and continue with this meeting.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
As I just stated, we're gonna give it a couple moments to make sure. Christina's going to give me the word just to make sure we get our other policy committee members on. And then we're going to get started with our public comment. We'll be moving forward. Thank you so much. Give us one moment.
Good morning. I have sent messages to the rest of the board members on policy, and I'm waiting to hear back. Or hopefully as a prompt, then they just join.
I'm sorry, Christina. I was making a transition. What were you saying?
I was saying that I sent messages to the other board members that are on the committee. I have not heard. Actually, Miss Escobar just wrote back that she's in another meeting and will join as soon as she's done with that one. But I have not heard yet from other board members, and I'll let you know as soon as they do.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I mean, this is a recorded meeting. We have guests and we have some things to get through. So,
Okay, Mr. Walker and Ms. Brody both said also just now that they will be joining shortly, but like you said, we do have guests, so I don't want to.
yeah, I'll give them the good college professor to 9:05 kind of thing. And if they're not in class by 9:05, we're going to go ahead and mark them as absent. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So just give us a couple more minutes to have a little grace for those folks who may be doing drop offs, such as myself. So just give them another minute or two. Thank you. Good morning, Miss Brody.
Good morning.
All right. Right, one more minute, and we're moving forward.
Yeah. Good morning. Pardon my tardiness.
Good morning. Good morning. Man, you made it right before the cut, man. 9:05 on the dot. Good job, ladies and gentlemen. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to get started as we have somewhat of a packed agenda. But I just really want to say thank you to everyone who really woke up this morning to be a part of this policy committee meeting. As most of you know, the policy committee is one out of two that I believe major things is important to the Hartford Board of Education. One, I believe, is the budget. Two, I believe it is the policies that we create. So this is a major function, and I want to, let everyone know that we do take this policy committee very seriously. We want to make sure we hear from people. We want to make sure that we're creating things that's fair and equitable. Again, as we always say at the beginning of our meetings, staff management is the job of the superintendent. Our job is to manage the superintendent. So with that being said, in our policies, we wanted to, last year, I believe maybe it was the beginning of this year, we wanted to create space for public comment in committees, because this is where the work gets done. And so today we wanted to we wanted to do it. We wanted to explore it. I'm not sure if other committees are doing it, but I certainly want to lead by example to make sure that we get the voice from people in the work, outside the work, and around the work, to make sure that we're doing the best that we can to create policies. So this month, which is December, I want to welcome you to our December policy meeting. And we're going to start off with public comment. And it is my, we have 3 people for public comment, but it is my hope that I know folks have to run and do other things, but I hope that folks that are doing public comment get opportunity just to stay and to hear the dialogue around the conversations that are having around policy. So with that being said, Christina, do you want to call the first person for public comment?
Sure. We have Ms. Carol Gale on the call, and please, when you speak, please introduce yourself and your title or role.
Thank you. I'm Carol Gale. I'm the president of the Hartford Federation of Teachers. And I first want to thank you very much, Mr. Johnson, for the opportunity to have public comment at a committee meeting. And I hope this is a practice that does pick up with other committees. I also want to thank the board for the opportunity to be able to discuss the policy with regard to public employees who are also elected officials, which is the one that I'm going to speak to this morning. I appreciate your openness to ideas and your thoughtfulness that is going into the updating of this policy. I think we all agree and believe that it is important to have people who are both employees and elected officials in various capacities. And I am aware that Hartford has had Board of Ed members who are employees, obviously Board of Ed in other districts, mayors, legislators, so we've had several employees who have taken on these additional roles. They become wonderful role models to our students in terms of embodying civic participation and involvement, which is so key to the development of young people to become self-sustaining, contributing members of a democratic society. We do have also increased demands on the workforce in general in this particular day and age. And so being able to offer increased flexibility is very important. And I'm pleased to see that some of the additions that you have made and revisions to the policy do afford increased flexibility. And there is one, and certainly the flexibility is well supported by Hartford Federation of Teachers. The one question I do have a slight change to some of the wording as I understand it. There is a part that says school-based and site-based positions are not eligible for flexible work hours. And then a sentence or two later, it says in the case where role is not eligible, you could still access release time given certain situations or conditions. Perhaps if that second sentence there were put up under the first one, just to make it a little clearer, it seems kind of contradictory when you're first reading through it, and then maybe following with the conditions, which sort of fall right now in between. So it may just be some reorganizing of the way the ideas are put in there, just to make it better clarified in terms of people who are not immediately eligible, but that on a case-by-case basis, should these conditions be able to fit, it could be. That would be my only question and suggestion to kind of answer my own question for you to consider. So again, I really do appreciate the opportunity to have this public comment, and I will stay on for as long as I can, though I do have another meeting. So I look forward to hearing your conversation. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Go ahead, Christina.
No, sorry, I didn't know if you want me to call the next name. I did forget to remind folks, as we explore this, right now I have a 2-minute time limit, even though there's only 3 speakers, but we just want to try to stay consistent. And next up we have Ms. Michelle Martinez.
Christina, can you collapse? Can you go to share screen?
Oh, you want me to stop sharing?
Yeah, just during public comment, just so we can see it.
Okay.
Yep.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me? We were just having some Wi-Fi issues.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. I'm Michelle Martinez. I'm Family Community Support Service Provider for McDonough Middle School, and I'm also a parent at the district. We met on, I think it was from July to October, to really talk about equity and equality and the policies committee. And it was great because we were given a voice. We were really talking about the different changes that can be made and different things that we can bring to the board so that we can ensure across the district that our students have the opportunity to get what it is that they need, and that it's that we do provide the equity and the equality across the district for every student, no matter what school you go to, no matter what side of town you live on. And it was great because we had an opportunity to collab. It wasn't just people that work for the district. It was parents, it was community partners, it was employees. I kind of was blessed to sit on both sides of the fence, but it was great because it really gave us an opportunity to collab and see different things that we could bring back to the board so that we could make policies that did embody all the whole entire family, but really focused on each student getting what it is that they need from the district.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And to be clear, Ms. Martinez was speaking on the equity policy, which is on the agenda for the policy committee. And last but definitely not least, Ms. Crystal Tenner.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Crystal Tenner. I am a parent in the district. We are New Britain residents, but we attend one of the district's magnet schools at Environmental Sciences Magnet at Mary Hooker. I'm also representing the FACES, the Family and Community Educational Support Program. I'm here to talk about the equity policy as well. Just like Ms. Martinez said, throughout July to October, we were able to meet with parents, educators, and really, I think, someone from each of the schools in our district to gather data and see how this policy affected them, to make sure that all of the schools were included in this. At that time, we discovered that a lot of the parents and family were really open to policies like this. They were very excited to be participating in the surveys that they were doing, and they appreciated that Hartford really valued their opinions on policies like these.
Thank you. And I just want to make sure that nobody else joined that I was unaware of. Is there anyone else here for public comment? Just double checking. Okay. All right, Board Member Johnson, back to you.
All right, awesome. Thank you to everyone who took the time to come out. And I think it's important that, as I stated previously, that it's important that when we create these policies, that we take every moment, every opportunity to allow public participation in it. And so I really value each and every one of you for coming out and just sharing your experiences with the policies that we have put out and the different various spaces. So I appreciate you all. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming. So let me I'm gonna take Board Member Brody's question, and then I'm gonna just set the agenda for the meeting so we can move forward. Board Member Brody.
I don't have a question. I have an ask. I think everyone who spoke in public comment. I do ask, as I've asked in other meetings, the board that we could be a part of, like if I knew that that families were being engaged around policies, it gives us the opportunity as board members to be present, to hear them. And then when we see the policy, we can see that some of their input and their concerns are in the policy, and we can advocate, because everybody know that's definitely where my heart is. But when we find out after the fact, it takes away the opportunity for us to be a part of knowing exactly what's going on when the board interfaces with the community. That's very important to me. So if we could make it a practice that those type of things, we know, like we'll go, oh, I know a FACES meeting because I'm a parent too. But if I know the intent that we're engaging for policy recommendations or input, that's a different, that puts that meeting in a different priority bucket for me. That's my only comment.
Yeah, that's fair. Thank you for that. And yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. We can certainly make sure you're aware. This is something that we've discussed here in the policy meeting, particularly around the equity policy. But we'll get there. I appreciate that. And when we get to the equity policy, we can kind of share what the steps have been that we have been working on. So we're going to get an overview of our agenda for today from Dr. Silver, and then we're going to push into our first agenda item. So I'm not going to hold the floor up any longer. Dr. Silver, if you could just lead us forward through our agenda. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pastor AJ, and good morning, everyone. I'm so glad to see the participation today. This is really great, and it's wonderful to have the public comment. I'm sharing my screen. Today, we have a second reading of our equity policy, and we have links here to the feedback we received from family and community, from students, and from staff. We also have a second reading of our political activities of school employees policy. This is a policy that's been updated and has some added flexibilities to it. We also have a first reading for our remote work policy and for our coach evaluation policy. And I just want to pause and confirm the order of the policies, because I know we have a number of staff members here, and we deeply appreciate that you're able to come this morning and be a part of our meeting. Pastor AJ, was there a particular order you would like, maybe a different order than what's appears on the screen?
No, I think. Yeah, I like this. I think we still move in this direction.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. So our first reading, our second reading is our first policy, the equity policy. Is going to open this document and actually open it in the desktop app. But while that is opening, I want to go back to our agenda and just share that we had great feedback that was beautifully compiled and organized by our family and community engagement team. And there were all kinds of components, evaluation. Each of the sections of the policy was reviewed by groups of families and members of our community. And we did have this great feedback to inform the language of the policy. We also had, and I just want to confirm maybe that folks can see the page that I'm using. We also had student feedback, and what we did in this process was items that were shaded in yellow were integrated into the policy, and items that were shaded in pink will be added to the administrative regulations of the policy. So you can see here that, for example, changes were made to language. People wanted to see the word guardians and not just parents, but we had additional feedback that families is a more appropriate term. So we will be adding that language to we have made those changes to the policy. Another example, general statement of policy, students felt the language was fake. They did not like the word gifted and said talented, capable, or similar word would be better. And so we did make those changes in the policy. Request to condense language. And again, a lot of the pieces that students lifted that we could apply and integrate into the policy, a lot of them fit into the administrative regulations or were already covered. And this change was made. So we were able to integrate a lot of this feedback and have on our work plan for the administrative regulations, additional perspectives to include in the administrative regulations, and also the staff feedback. What was helpful about the staff feedback is that there was very specific suggestions around proposed changes. So especially thankful to Betances Learning Lab. And you can see the names of the schools on the left here and the different recommended changes or questions that people had. So we were able to integrate these points into the overall policy. This was very, very helpful. So, and also someone lifted that mental illness was not, someone at Wish School mentioned that mental illness is not included in the policy. So that's another place where we can do more investigation, just to kind of highlight some of the contributions that our community made, which were really wonderful contributions and deeply appreciated. So we will go to our equity policy, and we are in the review mode. And go review, and we want to make sure that we are showing all markup. Yes. So this policy, again, is for a second reading. So we don't need to go, we don't usually go word by word through the policy, but you can see where, for example, staff asked that the policy apply to all people, not just students. And certainly that is something that has been integrated into the changes of the policy. And so we can see a lot of work has been done to integrate and add language and from the great suggestions that we received from students, families, and staff. This adult behaviors efforts should reduce achievement gaps or dismantle barriers to student success. That was a recommendation from one of our schools from Betances Learning Lab to replace the sentence, adult behaviors must not contribute to achievement gaps or create barriers to success. So that is a more proactive way of phrasing that and helps direct our adult actions toward reducing achievement gaps and dismantling barriers. We have a section on definitions where no changes were made. And again, you can see the parents was removed and families was replaced the word parents to ensure that it was more inclusive. And again, appreciation for the revisions that we received and the recommended adjustments that we received from our community of stakeholders. Here is the all students are equally while differently talented, removing the term gifted, which was a wonderful suggestion. Again, we go back to our families and away from the word parents. And there was a request to make the language in section E and section F more concise, and those changes were made. We weren't able to make as many changes in section E, but we were able to reduce the text for section F. And let's see, the section E, the district shall employ staffing processes that support and engender racial, gender, and language diversity in its staff through recruitment, employment, training, retention of employees. And one of the points here that did appear in a lot of the comments, and that is already a part of the policy, is that this sentence here, it is important that children of all races, cultures, and backgrounds are provided with familiar role models in schools. So people who look like them and who sound like them, who have the diversity of language, background, and ethnicity and cultural experience. And then opportunities for the district to build cultural competencies and professional learning around that. Now, a lot of the suggestions that we received from staff around professional development for cultural competence will actually be integrated into the administrative regulations, because the board policy, board sets the policy, and then the superintendent and the employees of the district are charged with carrying it out. So the administrative regulations will provide more detail about how this policy will be enacted in the schools. Not seeing any questions. I'm going to keep scrolling. One of the points that our families asked for was active participation, and we were able to integrate that into the policy on point G. So it's not just that we acknowledge, the board acknowledges that families are partners with the district in its efforts to address achievement and opportunity gaps, but that it would be through active participation. And also acknowledging that students are partners in their academic achievement through active participation, that school attendance and engagement are essential to reduce achievement and opportunity gaps that exist. The board superintendent and employees will actively collaborate. Will actively and collaboratively engage with students and families to identify barriers to achievement and opportunities for academic success. So we do, in our administrative regulations, we will be detailing out how that will be done. Pastor AJ, I return this to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Silver, for going through that policy. I'm just checking to see if there is any comments, concerns from my colleagues regarding this policy. Okay, not seeing any hands. Scrolling through, Christina, just let me know if you see any. Oh, I see a thumbs up. Okay, from Chairman Ricker. All right. So not seeing any hands. I think we're going to move this version of the equity policy forward to the board. And as was stated, we held this policy up a couple times because we wanted to give it the best shot we could to encompass every voice that we can, and I think that we've achieved that. I'm not going to say that this is a perfect document, but I think we really took time to really state what our intentions are and what education looks like in our board. So I think we're ready to move forward, Dr. Silver, to our next policy.
Thank you, sir. Our next policy is the political activities of school employees policy. And that policy has seen significant review by a number of people with a lot of refinements here. So I'm going to share my screen. So that we can look at this policy here. And again, the feedback is valuable and certainly something that we want to integrate, because these are our Board of Education policies that reflect our community. So initially, this policy was brought forward to update some of the language and legislative statute alignment. And so original revisions included requirements around the use of school property and school time for political activities. That was a revision that CABE had recommended. And CABE also recommended that we identify prohibited activities. So again, gave us a very clear list of situations in which political activities during school hours with students in the building, what's appropriate and what's not. And so these prohibited activities, posting of political circulars or petitions, collection or solicitation of campaign funds, solicitation for campaign workers, and so on. These are all standard practice items that needed to be embedded in this policy. So we did make those changes. And then you can see with the language that has been retained, the employees who hold elected public office. We had the phrase in other communities here, but regardless of which community a person holds public office, we did want to make sure that they can be granted release time for the performance of official duties related and hereto provided such release time so that it does not affect the ability of the employee to meet their job requirements, and there is no cost factor in excess of budgeted expenses during staff absences to the Hartford Public Schools for granting such release time. So we added that clarifying statement. The granting of release time for this position shall be determined by the superintendent or designee, and this decision shall be final and not appealable. That is language that was already in the policy. There was great feedback that we received from a number of folks, including Ms. Gale. And so we do have this paragraph here. I do have a question related to in collaboration with the supervisor, but the paragraph is new. It says at the superintendent or designee's discretion, in collaboration with the supervisor, a flexible or alternate work schedule can be approved to accommodate time for the performance of official duties. A flexible alternate work schedule is not considered an entitlement or a benefit and is neither a universal employee right nor a universal employee benefit. So that phrase, we had that paragraph is a very helpful paragraph to add, and it does reflect the feedback that we've received. There is a small phrase here, in collaboration with the supervisor. which we need board feedback from regarding, because at the superintendent or designee's discretion does imply that the supervisor of the employee who is an elected public official would be a designee of the superintendent. So the question is, do we need the statement in collaboration with the supervisor? Yes, and I see Mr. Rigger's hand.
Yes, sir. Mr. Rigger, go ahead. You have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Johnson. So in terms of, and I apologize for any background noise, I'm actually in transit to Cambridge right now, but I would say for this one, for me, when I say in collaboration with the supervisor, I'm not necessarily clear of what supervisor is being referred to. I'm wondering if the intent here is to say the building supervisor or the employee supervisor. So if we could just be more specific around that. And then I think with the after superintendent or the designee, I think if you have in collaboration with the, I don't think you need designee if you have the supervisor, I guess is what I'm saying. So it could be at the superintendent and or in collaboration with the building supervisor. And the reason why I say that is, and I want to thank Carol Gale for her input, and I actually agree. I think at the building level, there needs to be some flexibility of what's needed and what's not needed. And while I certainly believe that the superintendent has a good pulse of the district, I do think that there's probably another layer below her, again, which I think is happening at the building level, that can assess what that flexible work schedule looks like. So I just want to make sure, and I think that's the intent of this language here, or this paragraph, but I just want to make sure we capture it correctly.
Board Chair, can I be heard on that?
Who is this speaking? I'm sorry, is this Attorney Wilson?
Yes.
Yes. Are you done, Mr. Rigger?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Attorney Wilson.
I think there's a couple things happening in this sentence. So the superintendent or the designee may not necessarily be the direct supervisor of the employee. So the superintendent might have a designee here that wouldn't be the supervisor. So I think that language is significant and appropriate to kind of capture that first piece. And I think when we talk about in collaboration with the employee supervisor, not everyone is directly supervised by like a principal, right? So like that's important, and your positions can conceivably be different. So I think what was trying to be conveyed here is that the superintendent or the designee would be having a conversation with someone who directly supervises that flow of work. So there could be some kind of through line and conversation as to what a flexible schedule might look like for that particular employee, appreciating what role they have in the district. So you might be talking about three totally separate positions that are having this conversation that's leaning into the approval of the flexible work schedule.
Yeah, so Chairman Johnson, so for me, that's perfectly fine. I'm not looking for this policy to get into the details of the three different workflows. Whatever is I would say broad enough that captures all three, but allows for flexibility at the building level, I think is where the spirit of my comments are coming from.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Any other comments? Okay, Dr. Silver, what is your recommendation to proceed with what was said and heard?
Thank you so much, Pastor AJ. Based on the conversation, the concern that I believe Mr. Rigger lifted, and Mr. Rigger has his hand up, so I'm not sure.
Do you still have comment, Mr. Rigger?
He took his hand down, so I think.
Okay, all right, cool. Go ahead.
Okay, so the concern that was lifted in the feedback that we received was that the school principal be part of the communication link process regarding elected officials' release time to address their political responsibilities to their office. And by Mr. Wilson's statement about the superintendent or designee's discretion in collaboration with the employee supervisor, I believe that it does, we do have situations, staff who do not report directly to the superintendent or one of the superintendent's chiefs who are elected officials. So the building administrator, in collaboration with the employee supervisor, I think that makes good sense, and we can include that detail as a point of clarity in the policy so that because I think the spirit here is that everyone be part of that communication link and aware that an elected official will receive release time and when that release time will occur, and how to schedule the staffing support needed to ensure that that employee's absence will be managed well, regardless of the location.
Okay, very good. Mr. Walker, there you go. Okay, thank you, man. Feel free to hop in. I can't see everyone with the screen on. Thank you. Go ahead.
Hey, I just I've heard the comment too, and I appreciate what Chairman Rigo was saying. So this is to Dr. Silva. The way that the policy is written, must every absence of an elected official, must it float all the way up to the superintendent's level, for some kind of review or approval? So I think kind of where I thought, and I would agree with the Chairman Riger, that in many cases you're talking about someone. There are many times where teachers or other staff are excused or absent from school, and I didn't think each time someone is absent or has to leave early, it needs to go to the superintendent's office. Is that what the policy is saying? I guess I wanted to be clear. And is there something special in this case? Does the nature of the activity or something mandate that the superintendent must be involved? Is that how you're reading the policy?
Thank you, Mr. Wall. What I can speak to is that elected officials may require release time that is different than what might be conceived or experienced as a typical illness or something to that effect. And so the awareness that we may have a developing staffing need as a result of someone who holds political office also being responsible for political activities outside of the school building. So this helps the superintendent stay aware of what the staffing needs are for that absence, because there are cycles of absence of political elected officials that can be anticipated. So I do feel that the policy helps the superintendent and or her designee, such as our Office of Talent Management, Chief Talent Officer, stay aware of some of the staffing gaps that may be happening in a cycle, so that we can plan better to support those absences. And I see Ms. Brody has her hand up, but I wonder, Mr. Walker, did I answer your question?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Then in that way, then as you have it written, I think is appropriate. That then the collaboration with the building level or the supervisory level person would make sense then if it's always going to be, if it's about everyone being on the same page, which is what you seem to be indicating.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Board Member Brody.
Yes. So who would be the person responsible, because it can vary, right? If you are in building leadership and you're not day to day with the student, that looks very different than if you are a teacher or you're delivering a service directly to the student every part of your day. So it raises a concern for me on that level. So I don't know, is it that specific, or do we just say, oh, that's handled by the superintendent and we don't know whatever procedure that is? We probably would have to ask what that procedure is, but it's not written anywhere, because that is more concerning to me. If you're delivering instruction and you're going for these cycles, oh, the legislator, they're in session, that would be a main concern for me. So I don't know, is it addressed here or is that a separate conversation?
I'm sorry, Ms. Brody, who is your question for?
I don't know. I'm trying to understand, is levels to, it depends on what your position is, to what impact, right, that's gonna occur. If you're just a leader in the building, someone can say, oh, I'll step up, I'll go to that meeting, I'll do this. And they can arrange their schedule to make it work because they're not delivering those services day in and day out to a student. If you're a teacher, that's a little bit different. So how are we addressing that in policy?
That's a very good question, and I think that's what we're here trying to figure out.
Okay.
Seriously, that is it. The spirit of everything you said is, what we're trying to figure out.
Yeah, we don't need. I don't want to be in conversations that, or I don't care about if it's something simple and the superintendent, the principal, whomever, they work that out. That happens, or the superintendent designee, that's one thing. But my particular request is when you're providing direct instruction, or even if you are not providing instruction, you're like direct services to the child other than building leadership is my concern. And someone can't feel like, so are we going to say we're getting a sub because you're in session? That sort of thing. I'm hoping that we are certain on that when that is their function.
Understood. Thank you so much. Mr. Rigger, you might have something to add to this conversation.
Yes. So I want to echo Board Member Brody's sentiments. I would tell you when I had this conversation with Carol and others, there were three things that I said are what I would call non-negotiables, right? One being any negative impact to student services, direct student services, any no additional costs to the district, and that time, whatever time that person needs to complete their work, that the work will get done. I think the level of what we're talking about a little bit here is getting into a little bit of management. I think the policy itself, and I think Ms. Brody's right, assistant principal or a counselor or whatever is very different than a teacher. But that's not to preclude us from supporting teachers if they want to take political office or administrators, which is why, from my perspective, I think having the flexibility at the building level, right, or at the supervisor level to determine what is most appropriate, not only for that employee, but more importantly for our students, where, again, it's not impacting student services, there's no additional cost to the district, and also allows that employee to fulfill their political or civic obligations. I think again, I think what we're getting towards is more management. And I'm not sure if this is the right space for that, but I think it's certainly, to Ms. Brody's point, it's certainly something that we need to be mindful of. And I've said this to others, right? I think the policy as it's written is solid. I think we need to do a better job of enforcement and making sure that we're in compliance with the policy. That's it for me.
Your board member, Brody. Rigger. All right, so I know we can't stay here and beat this drum all day. I'm leaning, to Miss Brody's point. We've had several conversations between Miss Silver, Carol Gale, attorney, Paul, there's been a lot of conversations around this policy on what the best approach would be. And, I agree with Chairman Rigger that I think it's a decently solid policy. But I also want to help in the interpretation, but, in policy, you don't want to, to Attorney Wilson's point, you don't want to put so much on it, right? But we also want clear directives. Dr. Silver, I'm going to lean on you at this moment to chart us a course forward in the spirit that this policy is suitable, but the caveat to it is it's the carrying out of the management in that particular space. So, Dr. Silver, lead us.
Thank you so much, Pastor AJ. And I do see Mr. Walker's hand up as well.
Oh, my apologies. I didn't see it. Is that an old hand or a new hand, Mr. Walker?
It's new. I'm going to be super brief, Mr. Chairman, and hand it back to Dr. Silver, because I do agree with what Chairman Rigger is saying. At some point, we're kind of digging into the details. I was going to ask, like you did for the previous policy, you seem to take the comments and indicate that some comments would find their way into the policy, some comments would find their way into the administrative regulation. I think in this situation, if we could have some understanding that like this idea we're saying would find its way, if you would capture it and say, hey, we will make sure this gets into administrative regulation, I think we could be satisfied with that. It certainly wouldn't be in the policy itself, but I understand what I'm saying is that some things you don't want to see lost, even though it didn't on its way here. It doesn't deserve to be here. And so I was going to ask, maybe in the future, maybe we capture things like that, where you can indicate that, oh, this will be into the practice or some other document, and people who are interested then can review it and make sure that somehow the spirit of that found its way into the appropriate level. That's just a comment. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Walker.
Yes.
All right.
If I may continue, I also want to thank Mr. Walker and share that when we do create the administrative regulations, each of these meetings are thoroughly reviewed, like section by section, to integrate the good thinking that our board members are sharing, and also the feedback that we receive from other staff members, such as Attorney Wilson or Deputy Foster. So absolutely, to your point, Mr. Walker, we can and will add these elements to our administrative regulations. And so absolutely. And I do recognize Chairman Rigger's point about the management versus the board's governance. So, and this policy certainly is a lot clearer and has more detailed guidance in it than the policy before this language was added. So again, this has been really some very strong work that our board has done. Other people have contributed at CABE, and certainly members of our unions such as Ms. Gale and members of our staff. So I'm going to return to the language of the policy. And this is very helpful. We go next into a flexible work schedule for elected officials is not appropriate for all employees and positions, nor all employees in the same or similar jobs, and shall be considered on a case-by-case basis by the superintendent and designees. And that is in relation to Ms. Brody's question and concern that Chairman Rigger also lifted, the direct interface with students. Earlier in our public comment, Ms. Gale had asked if we could take this sentence here that I've highlighted in yellow, and I'm going to move it. She asked that it be moved to better organize the policy, and I agree. I'm moving it to be part of the flexible work schedule component of the policy in the case where a role is not eligible for a flexible or let's see, in the case where a role is not eligible for a flexible, let's see, or alternate work schedule. Oh, there, we did have that. I just didn't see it. Okay, flexible or alternate work schedule. The employee would still access release time if the release time does not affect the ability of the employee to meet job requirements and when there is no cost to the district. And those are points, again, that Chairman Rigger made earlier in his comments. And so we do have that element, that the spirit of that in this language here, and are in alignment with that request in this policy language. In addition, if I may just keep going here, employees approved for a flexible alternate work schedule must comply with all district policies and administrative regulations, procedures, including contracts and work schedules, and meet all evaluation performance standards. So it is a significant honor to have been elected as a public official and to receive approval for a flexible or alternate work schedule, and that employee will still need to meet all of their job responsibilities. And that is what this paragraph creates for our board. Nothing in this policy will be interpreted as prohibiting teachers from conducting appropriate activities that encourage students to become involved in the political processes of the party of the student's choice or as independents, nor does it prohibit the use of political figures as resource persons in the classroom. And this last paragraph was a paragraph that CABE recommended as the best practice component to this policy. Then there are additionally legislative legal references that have been added to this policy, again, to ensure that we are clearly referencing the statutes that give us guidance and direct us with regard to elected officials working in public schools. With that summary, I return this to you, Pastor AJ.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Silver, for leading us through this. You know, this policy is something I just want to be clear about. This policy. This policy, we certainly do take serious. As you know, we do have legislators that do work for us, and we also want to be as flexible as we can. And you know, all of us on this board, we have a board of probably 8 people now. And you know, I'm one of the board members who is actively at the state capitol, working as a community organizer on other issues. And you know, it is very, very challenging. I come from the perspective that it's very, very challenging to do the work at the Capitol and not have legislators, in their seats in committee meetings like this to really push public business, but I also understand that there needs to be lines drawn and clarity as well. So we certainly want to keep our legislators in Hartford Public Schools. There are other organizations and other educational entities that do this well. And so this is our push and our effort to do this well, but also have some, equity and transparency while doing this. So if there are I don't see any hands for any questions. I want to just open it up to colleagues just really quickly, just to make sure if there's anything before we move forward. I don't see any hands. Just checking for any hands. If there are no other hands, we are going to move forward, Dr. Silver.
Actually, Chairman Johnson, just a quick question for clarification. The next steps is that this version right here will be brought forth to the board for a vote?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, these are our two, I believe this is the last of our second readings for this meeting. First was the equity policy, which I'm very proud of. And it's kind of wild that this particular policy overshadows, the equity policy that we've been working on for like 8 years, kind of. It feels like 5 years. But, the business is a business. So in the second policy for second reading is this policy we just went over. Now we're moving on to our first readings. And I believe we have 2 of those, correct, Dr. Silver?
Yes, sir. We do have to.
Oh, I see a hand by Ms. Brody. As soon as you took the thing off. Go ahead, Ms. Brody.
No, I'm just hoping this particular policy doesn't end up grouped with other policies and is separate at the meeting. And I wanted to give a shout out to former board member Karen Taylor. She worked tirelessly. I mean, she did a big lift when she chaired policy to even get us in a rhythm. Her and former employee Dr. Matos. They worked very hard, but I just wanted to recognize Karen Taylor for all the work she did to even get policy lined up to be addressed.
Yeah, certainly. And that is the truth. And I think that we should invite Karen Taylor to the meeting on our next meeting to really just celebrate the work. Again, it didn't start with me, but I wanted to make sure it ended here. All right. Just wanted to make sure it ended here and we had something to kind of lead the districts across the state. So thank you for elevating that, Ms. Brody. And we should invite her to the meeting to see the part of her work passed and completed. All right. All right, Dr. Silver, first readings. This should be good.
Yes, thank you so much, Pastor AJ. We have 2 policies for first reading, remote work and coach evaluation. And because we have a number of staff in the meeting who have building responsibilities, I would like to go with the coach evaluation first. This policy is a standard best practice policy recommended by CABE. It's pretty straightforward in terms of what the language, and it is a mandated standard policy. So I just want to thank Heidi Schmidt and our coaches that are in the meeting today. Our not necessarily coaches, but our staff who are directly impacted by this policy. Thank you for coming to the meeting today. This is standard language, and this is a first reading, so it does give our full board, our policy committee, as well as our full board of education, an opportunity to look at the policy. So there shall be an annual evaluation of all coaches, and as Ms. Schmidt has been monitoring, again, this practice, our coaches do receive evaluations. So, but this policy just formalizes that. And so we have the policy, which is a standard policy for evaluating coaches. And we do defer to the Office of Talent Management to define what that policy, what that evaluation is. And then in our administrative regulations that accompany the policy, we actually have the evaluation form here. And that it is to be completed by the athletic director or the coach's immediate supervisor within 30 days of the conclusion of the coaching contract or sports season. This might be, as you might observe over here, I had lost some changes that had been made, and I believe this is 90 days. And that allows for enough time for staff to bring back all of the materials, the uniforms and things like that from our athletes and make sure that we have everything in place. And I know that the board doesn't necessarily finalize the administrative regulations, but I just wanted you to see the level of detail that is a part of this evaluation form. And so, again, a standard policy. And Pastor AJ, I defer to you to move us forward with this.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. So I see, I personally asked for Mr. Scanlon to come on. I've worked with him throughout the years, organizing parents around different things. And he is, he's just been, a solid, stable voice for athletics in our system. So I didn't want to move this policy forward without at least, as Chairman Rigger would say, check in, you got to check in real quick. And so, Mr. Sterling, I just wanted to get your just honest feedback just on this policy to see if it makes sense to what you understand and the coaches that you have over there in your many years of athletics in Hartford Public Schools.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me. I think it's important definitely to have a document like this. I know that I used one back in my early years, many years ago, but it just didn't have a lot of teeth behind it. And a lot of it had to do with, timeliness and everything was on paper. So I think having this digital is kind of very important. Not that it needs to be done quickly, but it just looks like it checks a lot of the boxes that I'd be looking for. And the fact that it's digitally created, it's something that can be done in an effective manner. And also I can see it, my coach can see it, and our admin here can see it. So far, so good. I like what I see.
I'm sorry, I was on mute asking for Ms. Schmidt. Thank you so much, Mr. Scanlon, just for sharing. Ms. Schmidt, do you have anything that you want to add to this?
Thank you. Good morning. Again, thanks for having us and allowing two of our school based athletic directors to give their input, because it's really important, as they are the ones with the boots on the ground with the coaches every day. No, I agree with this. We have been using this process in the past. I don't think it's been blanketed across every aspect of athletics, and that's where we're going to move forward with it. And now that it's going to be a policy, like Sterling said, it has teeth behind it. We're just going to have to work out some gray areas where we have to evaluate coaches that might be in their same bargaining unit, but we are working on that. At our last AD meeting, we kind of got together and have discussed it. And I know Ms. Silver and I are going to get together and have more future communications on this and put a plan together so that this can become effective and also easy to use, so that it becomes a common practice for us in athletics. So thank you.
All right, awesome. And Ms. Schmidt, did I miss anyone? Another athletic director?
Yeah, Adam Leonard from HMTCA is on the call.
All right, Adam, I'm going to, I hear your football games. You all played a game last week at Weaver, and it was, I hear the games very loudly, and I was very engaged in it, but I think you all got beat. But it was
a tough one. It was a tough one.
It sucks,
We definitely didn't put our best foot forward at that game, but it was a great season, and 5 of our schools are connected, are part of that co-op. So it was a very nice. You would never know they were from different schools if you ever went out there and saw them playing together. It's very nice.
That is true. I was at the Turkey Day game, and there were some students that didn't go to Weaver that were on the Weaver cheer squad.
Yeah,
and one of the parents were there, and that was really awesome to see. And she just was really excited about it. So that's beautiful, and we take it. But Mr. Leonard, I'm gonna ask that you come forward and give us your honest feedback on what we got going on.
Thank you very much for having me. My name is Adam Leonard. I'm the athletic director here at HMTCA. Just to piggyback off what Sterling and Heidi said, this is a good tool to make it uniform across the district. So this way, if Sterling has a coach and I have a coach, we can talk about it. I also shared it with my building principal because he is going to be sitting in with me in the evaluation process, and he liked it. Nice and easy, straightforward. And it gets to what the nuts and bolts and nitty gritty are for coaching. So I think it's a great tool moving forward, and I appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. Just want to check in with board members. Before, again, this is a first reading, but I just want to see if there's any board members that want to add anything, or if we're comfortable moving on to the second policy of our first reading.
Mr. Chair, this is Shantae. If I could have 30 seconds to just thank Mr. Scanlon. He was my daughter's teacher. I always like to thank those who poured into her life, but also his mom, who's no longer with us. But I would like to say publicly, she loves students in and out of the classroom, and she's on more than one occasion actually took students in the community so they can get an experience that she know they needed and would develop them further as young people. So I just wanted to make that statement because she definitely stood out as a top educator and exposed my child to things that changed her perspective and gave her more of an insight into the world she was going into. So I wanted to just have the point of privilege to say that to him publicly.
No doubt. Thank you.
And I appreciate that, Ms. Brody. I remember Taisha many years ago, and I remember my mother. Of course, I'm obviously not most objective person when talking about this, but to me, my mother was the best teacher I've ever seen in my life. And when she came to me, I remember her asking my opinion of Taisha and how to, quote unquote, handle Taisha, because Taisha was very outspoken, very brilliant young child. And I remember telling her, you are going to love her.
Her daughters, I gave it to her honestly. I apologize.
Absolutely. No apologies. I remember I remember the first time she came to me to ask me, I remember thinking to myself, I can't believe my mother, who I think the world of, is asking me as a colleague how to approach a student. And a few weeks into her first weeks with your daughter, she said she had unbelievable skill and was blown away by her knowledge of the history of African American history, and just how great it was to have her in class. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. And she also mentioned that to me. I met her at Weaver High School. She was at a game and we sat next to her, and when Taisha stepped away, she was like, I just want to ask you, and just, and I so appreciated her. When we see an educator who loves what they do, I mean, it's just, when you see it, what you appreciate it, and it will stay with me absolutely forever. So thank you, Mr. Chair, allowing space for that.
And if we can have more meetings like this, we'll be all right. No, I really appreciate that, and I appreciate just observing to hear the good work that folks are doing with students, and the amazing daughter that you have, Ms. Brody, that clearly is a daughter of the NAACP, right? So, being dragged to those meetings, you learn something. But thank you all for sharing that moment. Dr. Silver, let's move on to our last and final first reading, and we'll move this forward. For our board to take another gander. I don't think we have an issue with this policy. I think we're going to move this one forward to the second reading, but let's move on to the first reading of our next policy.
Thank you so much, Pastor AJ, and that was a really beautiful moment in policy. That was awesome. Thank you. Our next policy, again, this would go for first reading to our Board of Education at our next Board of Education meeting. And this is the first reading, so it does give us a chance to put the policy in front of our policy committee members, as well as to provide a copy of the policy to all board members so that they can all provide feedback and notify either Ms. Santiago of recommended changes or revisions, or to attend the policy meeting themselves to bring those recommendations forward. So this is a policy 4113.6 or 4213.6. So the 4000 series applies to our certified and non-certified staff. And this is a remote work, telecommuting, telework policy. And it was informed by CABE, and that is, we took the model language from CABE. It was also informed by other school districts, such as the Detroit Public Schools. Their policy is excellent for remote work. And so we have, I want to acknowledge the work of the Detroit Public Schools in creating a policy that would be so comprehensive and that would allow us to offer this opportunity to our staff if our board approves of this. Now, this remote work, telecommuting, telework policy is, we're putting this in place, of course, fresh out of and still recovering from the pandemic. We all experienced remote work at that time and certainly did not have this guidance in place during the pandemic for that. And now, because of very competitive employment, the employment opportunities, looking for highly qualified staff who don't have classroom required placements. For example, someone who is extremely skilled at web design or communications or some other part of the some other domain, who serves public school students and is an exemplar for that work. You know, this remote work, telecommuting, telework policy would actually allow the school district to hire someone who brings tremendous skill, but might not necessarily be able to live in Connecticut or be present at the office location every day. So it is a broad policy, and it does give us as a school district flexibility to hire the very best staff for the work that needs to happen in our school district. So we have initially just a general statement here. Remote work, telecommuting is the ability to work from home or a pre-approved work location away from an employee's work location or district locations, making use of the internet, email, or phone. By using available technology, an employee is not required to physically commute from home or elsewhere to a district work location. And the Board of Education recognizes that providing staff members the flexibility of working remotely may be necessary or desirable at times. Remote work, and I'm checking for hands, but I'm going to keep reading. Remote work is neither a universal employee right nor a universal employee benefit. Telecommuting is not appropriate for all employees and positions, nor all employees in the same or similar jobs, and shall be considered on a case-by-case basis by the superintendent and designees. School-based and site-based positions, those that are critical to the operation of the schools and provide direct support to students, families, and constituents, are not eligible for remote work. Remote work may be allowed as a reasonable accommodation under the Americans with Disability Act, ADA, for eligible positions. Requests will be considered on a case-by-case basis in accordance with the law, district policy, and administrative guidelines. Because this policy, our goal is to have a flexible policy, there was some standard language from the CABE policy that we needed to make sure would accommodate a broader range of circumstances. So this language was updated to reflect that. So the language now reads, should circumstances interrupt the district's ability to conduct school or business on a regular basis, remote work may be an option. The board understands and supports the belief that during normal times of operation, it may be beneficial to have some staff members with appropriate approval fulfill their professional responsibilities by working remotely. Telecommuting is not considered an entitlement or a benefit. Remote work, telecommuting, telework for purposes of this policy is defined as the performance of the essential functions of one's job description in a work location other than their assigned school or office. In addition, working remotely, telecommuting does not change in any manner the terms and conditions of employment with the Hartford Board of Education. Any change in the terms and conditions of employment shall be made a part of a memorandum of understanding between the board and the applicable employee bargaining unit. MOUs will be developed with the assistance of legal counsel. Telecommuting shall only be approved by the superintendent and designees and may be discontinued by the superintendent or designees at any time. All exceptions to this policy may only be made by the superintendent when required to meet district needs. This policy outlines expectations and provides guidance should the need arise for staff to work remotely. There was a section about eligibility, but that was integrated to make the policy more concise and direct. So availability. Employees working from a remote location shall be available to fulfill their professional responsibilities for a period of time not to exceed the length of the regular school day or workday per union contract. No employee shall work more than the contracted number of days provided in the parties' bargaining unit agreement. The total number of contractual days will vary depending on the employee's contracted agreement. Employees working from a remote location will check their school email and voicemail and shall be available to coworkers, students, families, and the community during their regularly scheduled workday. Staff working remotely will be available for meetings via phone or video conferencing technology and will, barring technical difficulties, have video enabled during said meetings. Responsiveness. It is the board's expectation that remote work take place during the identified workday as outlined above. Communication via email, personal phone, or other means may take place. It is expected that staff work during this time. It is expected that staff working during this time respond in a timely manner to requests for information and be productive employees. Lack of responsiveness on the part of the employee may result in termination of remote work opportunities. Equipment required. The district provided laptop computers should be used by the staff approved for remote work. The district security protocols, including FortiClient or other VPN technology, will be made available to employees working remotely. Beyond the provided laptop computer and necessary software for access to district resources, no additional or supplementary technology will be provided to staff approved for remote work. For example, a second monitor or a cell phone. It is the responsibility of staff approved for remote work to ensure adequate high-speed internet access from their remote work location to complete assigned duties. Staff unable or unwilling to ensure adequate internet access from their remote location, or staff requiring additional technology to engage in remote work have the option of not engaging in remote work. Utilizing the internet from public Wi-Fi is prohibited for remote work because of the potential to compromise critical and sensitive student information and/or financial information. District technology support will continue to be available as needed and will be provided at district locations. And here we have guidelines for remote work. And you can see a lot of updates here. I'm having a little trouble. Just want to go to simple markup so that you can see what this policy looks like. Here we are. This is a little easier to read because you can tell there's been a lot of work from our team on this policy. Okay, guidelines for remote work. Remote work will cease when determined by the superintendent or his or her designee. An employee's performance during remote work will be monitored in the same manner as all employees at their assigned school or office. The superintendent or his or her designee may authorize employees other than those identified as essential who would otherwise report to work during emergency school closings to instead work from an improved remote work location. Remote work may be used when the completion of special project work requiring minimal interruptions is approved by the superintendent or his or her designee. District employees who are approved by the superintendent or designees for a remote work arrangement are responsible to ensure at their own expense that their telecommuting worksite is conducive to the type or types of work they perform. Generally, telecommuting work environments must be safe and free of hazards to health and safety, conducive to the types of work the employee will perform, and ergonomically appropriate. District employees who engage in telecommuting arrangements shall therefore ensure the following. And here we have a list of requirements. The telecommuting space, environment, and furnishings. For example, a private workspace, a desk, a chair, internet and telephone access, enable the employee to accomplish their assigned duties. That the dedicated workspace allows unobstructed and uninterrupted work that promotes effectiveness and efficiency. A working environment that provides security over work-related technology, materials, and correspondence until their return to an official work location. A workspace that separates work from ongoing domestic activities. A workspace that restricts family pets, animals from the work area. Childcare, elderly care activity, or related personal responsibilities should occur outside of the workday and not within the dedicated work area. Control over noise, interruptions, work-related equipment and materials. Adherence to the number of days or hours of telecommuting allowed each week. The work schedule the telecommuter will customarily maintain, and the manner and frequency of communication with their supervisor or designees as expressly directed. Record of his or her hours worked, vacation, sick, or other leave are as expressly directed by the supervisor. Adequate internet and telephone service. Accessibility by telephone or electronically within a reasonable time period during the work schedule. I thought this was really insightful. No face-to-face interactions with business contacts are to occur in the employee's residential location. So that does protect the employee, and it does protect the district as well. Employees who do not have or are not able to provide themselves an appropriate place to perform telecommuting work functions shall not telecommute and should work instead at their generally assigned district work locations. Any business expense incurred by the telecommuter as a result of telecommuting arrangement shall obtain department manager approval before being incurred. All requests for reimbursement shall be accompanied by proper documentation to support the expenses in accordance with all applicable district accounting, ethics, and financial control policies and administrative guidelines. Time at home or elsewhere spent in activities other than work shall not be submitted as work time by the employee to their supervisor or designee as directed. Such circumstances would constitute falsification of time records to receive pay for time not worked and shall be grounds for termination. District employees on Family Medical Leave Act leave or other types of continuous leave shall be prohibited from telecommuting. Employees eligible for telecommuting are confined to telecommuting within the United States of America with work hours in alignment with Eastern Standard Eastern Daylight Time. Additional requirements. Remote work may not be used in lieu of taking sick leave. Staff may not be approved for remote work if they are the primary caregiver for another person at the remote work location during their assigned work day. Employees approved for remote work must comply with all district policies and administrative regulations and procedures, including contracts and work schedules, and meet all evaluation performance standards. Work-related injuries that occur in the alternate work location must be reported to the supervisor and require adherence to the workers' compensation guidelines. Employees are responsible for maintaining and protecting equipment on loan from the district. Equipment on loan shall be used for work-related purposes only, and use is governed by the district's acceptable use policy. Employees are responsible for protecting all data and ensuring compliance regarding confidentiality of materials. Okay, I'm sorry about that. Switch to all markup. Let's go back to simple markup. Okay, and that is a general overview of our policy. Mr. AJ, I return this to you, noting Mr. Walker's hand is up.
Okay, thank you for letting me know Mr. Walker's hand is up. Mr. Walker, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Silver, a lot to take in, and I'm just going to have one comment because we're really out of time. I think in the area of guidelines for remote work, you have the district employees who are approved by the superintendent for remote work are responsible for their only expense for a whole litany of items. You have it right there. I would suggest kind of reevaluating that. If they're approved, to me, there's when you talk about health and safety and workplace accommodation, probably the district has some interest in providing some reasonable coverage for certain equipment at a home that's going to make that environment, ergonomically safe and so forth and so on, right? Or at least compliant, right? And to kind of spike that out, I understand the other elements of, you're not trying to buy people's office equipment and you're not trying to buy their Wi-Fi. So, because later on because in A through K, you have so many specifications that it almost, at that point, you have to help the employee at some level with some of the expenses. And you tend to acknowledge that at the very end, that there seems to be some allowable expenses to meet all those requirements that you have. So maybe combining that with the previous paragraph, just to clarify what support the employee is going to get from the district for reasonable expenses, and then what things are just on them. And I would just offer that the safety, ergonomic, and EH&S type of compliance is probably one that the district would be interested in supporting the employee getting. That's my only comment.
Awesome, thank you. Any other comments regarding the first reading of this remote work policy? Checking for hands. Checking for hands. Checking for hands. See no hands. Okay. Again, this is for first reading, and I really don't like HR policy. That's just my personal. That's just my personal. They sound very restrictive. So my recommendation, again, to my committee is, as it is always, let's check in with folks, to see if this makes sense. We're not trying to. My goal isn't to make anything more restrictive than it needs to be, but there certainly needs to be a level of accountability in this new world that we're living in. So I want to make sure that we do that, but we also don't turn people away as we have, some shortages, right? And we want to be as flexible as possible in this day and age. Because I know I took today off work because my kids are sick and I'm sick, and I'm just waiting for that call to be like, come get them. So I just went and took the day off because I'm expecting that call at some point. But nonetheless, this is the first reading, and I'm not seeing any hands or any comment on this particular policy. So with that being said, Dr. Silver, is there anything else that you want to wrap us up with?
Thank you, Pastor AJ. I so appreciate, we've had a great policy meeting. We will move forward then for a first reading of this policy for our full Board of Education at our December Board of Education full meeting. And this policy meeting has just been wonderful. The public comment was very helpful and much appreciated. The engagement was very helpful and helped us to craft language and integrate language into our policies that takes into account the breadth of thinking and experience that our community has. And so I'm deeply grateful and want to wish everyone a healthy holiday season. And I hope you and your family feel better, Pastor AJ. Thank you.
No, thank you. And again, I appreciate every one of you for coming on. Sorry that this went a little longer than necessary, but we wanted to make sure that we lay out everything that we have for our upcoming meeting. So thank you all for your input. Thank you all for your time. Have a wonderful day. God bless you. Have a great week.